Pokemon cards have become a hobby that every corner of the world enjoys, and if you think Pokemon cards are just nostalgia, then you're already behind in what the hobby has become. Pokemon cards have become a worldwide phenomenon, and what began as like casual collecting has evolved into identity, cultural relevance, and a core part of modern pop culture. Collecting Pokemon today isn't just about cards, it's become an identity where millions of people connect across the world. Collectors love chasing the top chase cards, filling out master sets, and connecting with the huge Pokemon community out there. Though if you are a beginner or you're just entering the Pokemon world, you probably feel overwhelmed. That's why in this video, I'll be giving you the easy guide to collecting Pokemon cards that's very simple to understand and lets you easily enter the hobby. I think when you start collecting Pokemon cards, the overwhelm can just be a little bit too much. I mean, from all the different rarity types, the chase cards, how you need to acquire product. I mean, yes, Pokemon cards are really fun to collect and they're very enjoyable, but if you've just entered the hobby, you kind of feel like you're very late to the party and you're in this very complicated world where everyone else already understands things that you've never heard of. That's why in this video, I actually want to break down all that complexity, and you can think of this video as your super useful guide to beginning your Pokemon collecting journey. Now, before I get into all the details about Pokemon cards, and I'm going to be taking you through a little bit of a journey, it's actually probably a good idea for you to learn about me. My name's Phil and I run this Pokemon collecting YouTube channel, and I've been collecting trading cards ever since I was introduced to them at 4 years old, and I've had a huge time collecting Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And a few years ago, I decided to take my hobby out to the world and started this YouTube channel. Now, outside this channel, I work in video marketing. So my goal is to give you Pokemon card content that's not only accurate, but super easy to watch and that's enjoyable. So definitely, if you are a fan of Pokemon cards, definitely feel free to subscribe. Though collecting Pokemon seems pretty simple at face value. You buy a pack, you open the cards, and hopefully you pull something that you want to add to your collection. Though to be fair, collecting has gotten a few more nuances over the years, and that's what we really need to cover in today's video. Though to start this off, the most important aspect when starting to collect Pokemon cards is knowing how to actually identify your card. And this is also important when you want to sell your cards or if you want to purchase these as well. When looking at Pokemon cards, you need to be very specific with what you're looking at. You can't just get away with knowing a Pokemon card's name. The reason why that's not enough is because a lot of the time, certain Pokemon cards have multiple versions of the same card in a different rarity tier. And sometimes they even have the same card spread across multiple sets in different artworks. Now, to easily explain this, right here you can see this Teal Mask Ogerpon EX from the set Twilight Masquerade. Now, if I just typed in and searched Teal Mask Ogerpon EX, I could get a whole bunch of cards pop up because this isn't the only version to exist. In fact, multiple versions exist. So this one right here that you can see on screen is the double rare or the regular EX Teal Mask Ogerpon from the set Twilight Masquerade. But also in Twilight Masquerade, the Teal Mask Ogerpon EX also exists as an ultra rare. Now, if you look closely at the card, you can actually see that the HP and the ability of the card are identical. These are the same card. The only difference is that the ultra rare is a higher rarity of this particular card. But also, this isn't actually the highest rarity to exist because also in Twilight Masquerade, the same set, this Teal Mask Ogerpon EX also exists as a special illustration rare. So as you can see, Teal Mask Ogerpon now has 3 of the same cards in 3 different rarities. But that's not all, because if that wasn't enough, this particular Teal Mask Ogerpon also exists as a hyper rare, or commonly known by the community as a gold rare, which is technically the rarest version of this card from Twilight Masquerade. So right here in the same set, you have 4 different rarities of the same Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. But if that's not enough, right, to add even more complexity, sometimes the same card can be released as a different artwork or in a different style in another set. So while this Teal Mask Ogerpon exists in 4 different versions in Twilight Masquerade, this Teal Mask Ogerpon EX also exists in Prismatic Evolutions. Now, the regular EX from Prismatic Evolutions is the same card, but funnily enough, the artwork has been reversed. So as you can see, the Teal Mask Ogerpon in Prismatic Evolutions has the exact same HP, has the exact same text and abilities. It's the same card, but in a different set. But here's where it gets really interesting. This Teal Mask Ogerpon EX also exists in another special illustration rare, and it also has another gold rare version in Prismatic Evolutions, which is different to the one in Twilight Masquerade. So while this may seem a little bit complicated, the point I'm trying to make very clear is that calling your card by its name in Pokemon cards, or just by searching the name, doesn't do much because, as you can see, Teal Mask Ogerpon EX has multiple versions of the same card, all in different rarities across multiple sets. So that's why the most important thing you can learn when collecting Pokemon cards is learning the particular number of your card, which is even more important. At the bottom of each card, there is a number along with a little code showing you which set it's from. Though if you are trying to buy or sell a certain card, it's very important you learn the number of your Pokemon card, as this is just as important as the name of your card. So this means when you're searching something up, or if you're looking for a particular card, you would put the name of the card along with the number to find what you're looking for. So if I was searching for the regular EX from Twilight Masquerade, I'd search Teal Mask Ogerpon EX 025/167. Or if I wanted the hyper rare from Prismatic Evolutions, I'd search Teal Mask Ogerpon EX 177/131. This is the most important aspect for learning how to identify your Pokemon cards, and hopefully you can actually see why that number is so important, because there's multiple versions of the same card in different rarities. Now, rarities is also important to understanding collecting Pokemon cards, because like I showed you with the Teal Mask Ogerpon, there is a bunch of different rarities from the same card. Now, if you've just started collecting Pokemon and you're trying to learn your rarities, this can get very overwhelming. There is so many different rarities. There's reverse holos, there's Master Ball reverse holos, then you've got your EX cards and your ultra rares to hyper rares, and now there's mega attack rares and illustration rares, and the list goes on and on. To make this much easier, honestly, most people who collect Pokemon cards don't actually understand every rarity, and that's not a knock on collectors at all. The reality is the rarity system itself has become pretty complex over time. The easiest way to understand Pokemon rarities is to focus on the specific set you're collecting. Rarities and pull rates change from set to set, so they only really make sense in that context. So rather than getting bogged down with all the different versions, it's much better to look at a particular set and research it from there. Now, the other confusing thing about rarities, and a lot of beginners think this, is, the highest rarity is definitely the most expensive card from the set. But believe it or not, just because it's a higher rarity doesn't always mean it's going to be the most expensive card from the set. As I mentioned with that Teal Mask Ogerpon, the hyper rares are technically the rarest cards from the set to pull, though the market actually prefers the special illustration rares, which are a little bit easier to pull. So it's important to understand that before you buy cards, you may get surprised with the pricing, how it doesn't match up with the rarities. Now, a very important area, and probably the most important area when starting to collect Pokemon cards, is actually creating a goal when you start collecting, because chasing the top chase cards is always a race to the bottom. Goals in Pokemon collecting are important because they help you in two ways. Number one, they help you to not overspend, and number two, they let you know once the objective has been completed. Pokemon cards don't have an end. Every other month, a new set is released, new chase cards enter the market, and new hype trains arrive, which pull the focus to another new thing. One thing I see when people start beginning to collect Pokemon cards is that their minds are just in this whirlwind of options, and the biggest early mistake is they collect all the cards from all over the place and they spend too much money. If you begin collecting Pokemon, the smartest thing you can do is create a goal for what you are trying to collect, or a certain project. For example, a very common goal that a lot of collectors do is they try to collect a particular set's master set. This means collecting every single card from one particular set, from all the commons to the reverse holos, all the way to the final top rarity cards. Now, the reason why this is so good is because by doing this, you have tasks and objectives. You also have an end goal, meaning you know when the job is done. The biggest problem is collectors haphazardly spending because, if you're just new to the hobby, it's very common to spend far more than you're comfortable with, and then you never really have a checkpoint to know where you should take a break. Because having a goal actually sets checkpoints where you take breaks when needed. So it's not just about master sets, okay? You could actually open up and, collect a lot of certain areas of cards. But you can also create goals such as creating maybe an underwater themed binder, or you can even start working on pages of binders of your favorite Pokemon illustrator. This gives you an easy checkpoint to know what you're looking for. Now also, while talking about these goals, if you do want to find cool collecting goals, or maybe you want to see what others are doing, definitely feel free to ask that and check it out in my channel's Discord. There's thousands of collectors in the Pokemon community. You can join the Discord. The server invite is in the video's description. Now, another area when starting to collect Pokemon cards is understanding the impact of what you see online is not always the hard truth. I know when I started revisiting Pokemon cards, all I saw were people's insanely expensive collections. It's very important if you're buying Pokemon cards to avoid getting into any self-comparison, because someone who's been collecting for 3 years is almost always going to have a better collection than you. And also, they will likely have bought those cards for much cheaper than you could buy them for today as well. Because Pokemon cards have naturally risen in price over the years, and it seems that they're going to continue to do so if they follow the same trajectory. So, when starting out, don't look at someone's collection today and then look at the prices of that and then think that they paid those prices. It's very likely that they bought that at a cheaper time and they just allowed the market to naturally get to that point. So that's why if you're focusing on collecting, avoid putting too much effort on what others are buying, and definitely don't compare yourself with others either, because don't believe everything you see. While a lot of things will be true, not everything is pure fact when it comes to collectibles, because there's a lot of ego within this hobby. That's why it's important to take the time to move at your own pace with the hobby and build a collection that's built for you. Because the more you get into this world, the more you understand how expensive it can be. And that's what I mentioned before about having those goals and checkpoints. It really makes collecting very much more sustainable for the long term, because it's very common for newcomers when they enter, they overspend, they get a little bit burnt, prices don't go how they anticipated, and then they might be buying things without a lot of research, and then of course they might be disappointed in the prices a few years later. So the thing with it, and the way it works best, is if you take your time in the hobby, let yourself learn the hobby and just go slow. It's actually very counterintuitive, because when people enter, the first thing they do is overspend on cards, buy as much as they can, and hope for the best. Whereas when you're longer in collecting Pokemon cards and you understand how the hype cycles work and the hype waves, you get a more nuanced kind of approach to collecting, which is very important. Now, as exciting as collecting Pokemon cards can be, collecting Pokemon cards on a budget is also one of the key skills to master when buying Pokemon cards. And I actually explain what I mean by that in this video on screen right here. In this video on screen, I go deep into collecting Pokemon cards on a budget. If you enjoyed this video, click the video that's appearing on screen to learn more about that topic there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.